Hello everyone, and welcome to the first Monday of January 2015, the first Monday of the year. And I'm coming to you um, on a Monday, as I just mentioned. But I wanted to do a short video today and talk about a couple of things that are on my mind. One of them just came to my attention today, and as you can see, the Christmas tree is still behind me. And technically, since I'm from Puerto Rico, the holidays don't end over there until after the 6th, because they celebrate the Epiphany, which is celebrating supposedly the day that the three kings, or the Magi, as they're referred to in the United States, came to visit Jesus. And so that's part of the celebration, because the Puerto Rico, as with the great majority of Latin American countries, is still a majority Catholic country. So that's celebrated. So really, for us, a lot of times most of the time, we leave the tree up till after the 6th. So hope it's not distracting. I see that the lights are flashing, but hopefully it won't be too distracting for you. I was listening to a radio talk show today, and they were discussing this individual, a Dr. Walsh, who had applied to work at the State Institute of Health in Georgia. And apparently he's an individual who's done some preaching before. He had been some sort of a minister, and he had done some sermons about the Lordship of Christ, the sovereignty of God. And in those sermons, he talked about how he was a believer in literal six-day creationism. And also he had talked about how he believed that the original design by God still holds for marriage, which is one man, one woman for life. And as I mentioned, he had applied for this job, a state job, a government job, for which he was very well qualified, and apparently he was selected for it. But then, for some reason, apparently somebody got wind of the fact that he had been a minister, and they asked him for his sermons. And when they saw his sermons, obviously talking about his belief in creationism, his belief of the sanctity of marriage, then they sort of dehired him, so to speak. They disinvited him to be a part of their organization. And so now that's going through the courts, because he claims that, and with good reason I would think, that he was discriminated against because he was basically unhired because of his religious beliefs, which is, at least at this moment, January 5th of 2015, is still illegal in this country. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit, because I think that that's just the latest example of the way that society is going. Evolution obviously is something that if you claim to have any scientific knowledge at all, and you claim to be a creationist, well then you're immediately tarred and feathered, so to speak. You can't be intelligent, you can't be rational if you believe in creationism. And if you believe in literal six-day creationism, that's even worse. I mean, even within the church, many people will talk about how, well, maybe creation is creation, and it wasn't evolution, but maybe it was six eras that Genesis is talking about, and not 6 days. And maybe God used evolution to bring about man, and so on. So sort of theistic evolution. So even at best, if you believe in creationism, then they may tolerate you believing in creationism to the extent that God used evolution to bring about creation. So, and then of course the same-sex issue is something that just continues to be in the forefront. And this radio show, I was listening to the hostess made an interesting comment, and that is that it's no longer just a guy at the corner who lives in the corner who wants to be left alone to do what he wants. In other words, if you go and talk to them about the scriptures and about the gospel, they'll say no thank you politely, and I'd like to just continue doing what I want to do, and I don't believe in that stuff, and that's the end of it. Now it's become a militant issue. Now they want to not only be left alone to do what they want, but they want validation. They want acceptance. They want approval. And that, I think, is the biggest issue with all of this. The personal, what at one time was the personal beliefs of a few, is increasingly becoming the view of many people, because there's a lot of people who may not hold those particular views themselves, but who are tolerating this idea without saying anything about, hey, this is wrong, God finds it wrong, and if you engage in that sinful behavior, you're going to have to pay a price for it. And so a lot of people are going that way. And so private attitudes are becoming to infringe on the public and are becoming public regulations, legislations, public attitudes. And so it's no longer just, well, I hold my views, you hold yours, and that's okay. Now it's, I hold my views, and if you say they're wrong, then I'm going to do everything I can to put you in jail or to silence you. Or, as in the case of this individual, to not hire you for a public position. And that's pretty insidious. And it seems like with the same-sex marriage issue, more than any other, it seems to be going the reverse of racism. Racism used to be something that was out in the public sphere all the time, that was approved by the majority of the people in this country, that was viewed as normal. And then little by little, it's become something that's more privately held. Racism still exists, make no mistake about it, but it's become more of a private attitude that individuals have, not so much an institutional thing like it used to be in the past. With the same-sex issue, it's going in the other direction. It started with just a few people holding these ideas, and now it's becoming more, it's infringing more and more into the public sphere. So, as it's happened in other countries, don't doubt that in the not too distant future, there'll be legislations here where they'll seek to legislate what you say from the pulpit. And if you say something from the pulpit that just rubs the wrong people the wrong way, well, then likely you're going to be silenced. I think there was a comment made during the program that where they were saying that it'll be a dangerous day when what you say from the pulpit on Sunday affects your job or your position on Monday. And so that's the way that we're headed, unfortunately. Shifting gears a little bit here, last video that was posted to our channel was actually a video made by my son, and he was doing a little review of a knife because he likes all that stuff. And during that review, the first part of the video, he was talking about debates, and he was saying something to the effect that the best approach to listen to debates and to make sense of debates and so on and so forth would be to decide, well, this person is doing the right thing, this person is more prepared, this person is making more sense, so go with that person. And the problem with that is the person that's the most prepared, that sounds the most logical, is not always going to be the person that holds the true position. There's going to be times when the truth is not going to be well represented. And so you're going to have to be careful about that. And there's a number of reasons why that may be the case. Sometimes the least prepared of the debaters is the one that happens to be holding the truth. Other times the person may not be maybe having a bad day. Maybe having some problems with their memory or something. May not be able to say, I don't know. A lot of people have that problem. And especially when they're in a debate, they feel that they have to have all the answers. And if they don't have all the answers, well, then they're going to answer something, whether it's good or logical or makes sense or not. Maybe they aren't a good debater. Some folks out there, they debate, but that doesn't make them a good debater. Practice can only get you so far. Everybody has varying talents. And if you don't have a talent for debating, primarily being quick on your feet and being confrontational, because debates for the most part are confrontational, if you don't have those qualities among others, then you're not going to make a good debater. And so a lot of times people think that, well, this is what I want to do, so it must be right for me to do it. And that's not necessarily the case. So you got to be careful in those situations. And I think that debates seldom change minds. Let's say it out front. Out of maybe, if you have 1,000 people in the audience, maybe one or two will begin to reconsider their particular stance. I think that a lot of times debates, what they do is they sort of reinforce your particular worldview. So if you're on one side or the other, well, that particular individual is the one that's going to make the most sense to you. But I think that a debate, to me anyway, the idea of a debate should be, I'm going to listen to it, or I'm going to read it, but because before the internet, debates were primarily either, if you weren't there in person, then you had to read the book that was written about the debate. And so you're going to watch it, or you're going to read it, and you're going to study it and consider it and say to yourself, I want to check these things out. Be like the Bereans, right? And Acts 17 and 11. I want to check these things to see if they're true. And if they are true, well, then I have a decision to make, right? If it happens that the person who has the truth is the one that does the best job of debating, who puts forth the best case, well, then that's great. But if not, I think that in either case, you still have to examine things for yourself, go to the scriptures, and make sure that you're learning what the scriptures have to say. Not just because somebody else said it, regardless of what that person's qualifications may be, but also for yourself, because that's why God has given us His Word. And speaking of the Word, shifting gears a little bit again, a couple of weeks ago, the preacher at our congregation, Marvin Bryan is his name, gave a really good sermon. And in the sermon, of course, it was before New Year's, so it's the time when you begin to talk about New Year's resolutions and all this other kind of thing. And he said that we should commit ourselves to reading the Gospel slowly over 2015. And I thought that was great. As a matter of fact, before that, I had ordered an interesting book. It's called The Synopsis of the Four Gospels. And the Synopsis of the Four Gospels, the word synopsis, and that's something that my son had a question about, because synopsis, of course, we use the word synopsis usually as a compendium or as a summary of something. But the actual word is a compound word that comes from the word sun and optics. Sun and optics, really, is the way they're pronounced. Which means sun is together and optics is, as the term implies, vision or seeing. So you're seeing together. So when you're talking about the synopsis of the four Gospels, is you're seeing all the Gospels together. And what's happening with these with the Gospels is they're sort of like put in columns, and let me show you here. a little bit of how it looks. They're all in columns, and so you can see how the Gospels all are in columns, and so you have sections or periscopes. That's what they call them. 367, as it turns out, where there's divisions of the Gospels and what they're talking about in that particular instance. For example, what does the prologue for Mark say? What's the prologue for Matthew say? For Luke and for John, respectively. In some instances, like for example, the Annunciation to Zacharias and to Mary, that's only found in Luke. So you'll only get a reading from Luke for that particular section. And so what we're doing is we're doing it one a day. Of course, at the end of the year, we'll have to double up a couple of days so we can fit them all in 365 days. But I think that that's a great idea. Most of the sections are pretty small. They're a matter of maybe 15, 20 verses across the four Gospels. And so good resource there if you have the opportunity. You still have, it's only the 5th. If you get it by the 10th or the 15th, you'll have to double up for a couple of weeks, but you'll be able to get to it, catch up fairly quickly. My wife, my son, and I are doing it every night, and so we read it, whatever the section is for that particular day, and then we discuss it a little bit, and so it's proven to be quite good, even in just the 4 days that we've been doing it. So those are the 3 things that I want to discuss with you tonight. I hope that you had a great New Year's, and that the year that is just beginning will bring you nothing but good things, and that the Lord will bless you, and with the desire to learn more about Him and to grow closer to Him. May God bless you, and we'll see you next time.